Listen, my friend, every single person in this room, every single soul hearing these words right now is fighting something. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the feeling that life hasn't turned out the way you thought it would. You've prayed, you've planned, you've tried, and yet it feels like nothing is moving. You're doing everything you can, and still you're stuck in the waiting. But here's the truth, you're not stuck. You're being strategically positioned. What feels like delay is not denial, it's divine direction. God isn't ignoring your prayers. He's aligning your path. When we worry, we waste energy trying to control outcomes that were never ours to control. Worry says, I don't trust what's coming. Faith says, I trust who's guiding it. You see, when you start trusting instead of worrying, something powerful happens. You shift from fear to focus, from panic to purpose, from anxiety to alignment. There's a reason you're in this season. There's a reason doors have closed. There's a reason certain people walked away. God is not removing things from your life to hurt you. He's preparing space for something greater. That setback wasn't a punishment. It was protection. That delay wasn't a detour. It was direction. But here's what most people miss. Trusting God doesn't mean you sit and do nothing. It means you move with faith instead of fear. You keep showing up. You keep believing when the evidence doesn't match the promise. You take one more step even when the path isn't clear. Because, deep down, you are not walking alone. You think your dream is dead. You think your time has passed. Let me remind you, God doesn't operate on your clock. He doesn't rush when you panic. He moves when the timing is perfect. You might not see it yet, but every unseen detail, every delay, every challenge, it's all being orchestrated for your good. You've got to stop rehearsing your worry and start declaring your trust. Stop feeding fear and start feeding faith, because your words create your world. When you say, I can't handle this, your mind starts to believe it. But when you say, God's got this, something ignites inside you, strength rises, peace replaces panic, and clarity starts to break through the fog of uncertainty. Listen, peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of trust. You can have chaos all around you and still have calm within you if you know who's in control. You've been through too much to give up now. You've cried tears that nobody saw. You've had nights where you questioned everything, but those tears watered the ground of your future. You are not being buried, you are being planted. And when the right season comes, what's been planted will break through the surface. So stop worrying about the how. Stop replaying the what if. Stop measuring your future by your past. Your story isn't over. The author is still writing. The same God who brought you through before will do it again. And this time, he's taking you further than you've ever been. You may not understand the process, but you can trust the purpose. God's plan is not to harm you, but to prosper you. Not to destroy you, but to develop you. Every trial, every heartbreak, every delay, it's shaping you for the destiny you were born to fulfill. So today, make a decision. A decision to release worry and embrace trust. A decision to say, even when I don't see it, I will still believe it. Because your breakthrough doesn't begin when the situation changes. It begins when your mindset does. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to know the one who already does. Trust his timing. Trust his process. Trust his plan. Because right now, right here, God is still working. And when it's all said and done, you'll look back and realize every delay had a purpose, every detour had meaning, and every moment of waiting was worth it. Now breathe. Release the worry. Lift your head. The plan is already in motion, and it's better than you imagined. God has a plan for you. Trust it, walk in it, and watch everything change. Worry is the silent thief of potential. It drains your energy, your creativity, and your faith until you're left exhausted, paralyzed by fear, and unable to move forward. When you worry, you create a movie in your mind filled with worst-case scenarios that haven't even happened. You begin to live in a future that's distorted by fear instead of possibility. You start to react to things that don't exist yet, and the more you feed that energy, the more powerless you feel. Worry is the mind rehearsing failure. It's your energy being spent on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. But when you shift that same energy toward trust, everything begins to change. The energy that once fueled anxiety now fuels faith. The imagination that once created fear now creates vision. The emotions that once pulled you down now lift you up because you've shifted the source of your focus from self to spirit, from control to surrender, from panic to power. You see, energy is neutral. It's not inherently good or bad. It becomes what you direct it toward. If you put that energy into fear, it becomes worry. But if you channel it into faith, it becomes trust. The same intensity that used to make you anxious can become the same force that propels you forward when you choose to redirect it. Worry says, I have to fix this. Trust says, God is already working on this. Worry fights for control. Trust releases control. Worry tries to predict outcomes. Trust rests in divine timing. When you stop worrying and start trusting, you begin to operate from a place of power rather than panic, from peace rather than pressure. You move differently. You speak differently. You make decisions based on purpose, not fear. When you trust, your energy aligns with faith, and faith is creative energy. It builds, it expands, it multiplies. Worry contracts, it makes you small. It shrinks your dreams down to what seems safe. But trust expands your capacity to believe again. It opens you to possibilities that only faith can reveal. Worry is a form of disbelief. It's saying, I don't believe things will work out unless I control every outcome. Trust, on the other hand, is surrender with expectation. It's saying, I don't know how this will work out, but I believe it will. That belief shifts your focus. It turns your eyes from the problem to the promise. You stop analyzing the storm and start aligning with the calm. You begin to realize that the same energy you used to waste on worry can now be used to build your faith, strengthen your vision, and deepen your relationship with God. Worry takes you out of the present moment. It drags you into a future that isn't even real yet and fills it with fear. But trust anchors you in the now. It says, I am where I'm supposed to be, and God is working right here. The power of trust isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about knowing that even when things don't make sense, there's purpose behind the process. When you choose trust, you release the weight of needing to figure it all out. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. You allow your heart to rest while your faith takes over. Think about how much time and energy people waste worrying about things that rarely ever happen. Studies even show that most of what we fear never actually comes to pass. Worry creates fatigue, emotional burnout, and even physical stress, while trust restores energy and peace. When you trust, you align yourself with flow. You start noticing opportunities instead of obstacles. You hear inspiration instead of doubt. You become more productive because your focus is no longer fractured between fear and faith. Worry divides your attention. Trust unifies it. The reason many people feel stuck isn't because their circumstances are impossible. It's because their energy is misdirected. They're using all their power to maintain fear instead of building faith. They pray, but then they worry right after. They say they believe, but their actions still come from doubt. The truth is, faith without trust is just theory. You can't say you believe in God's plan while trying to control every step. You can't claim peace and still feed panic. Trust isn't passive, it's powerful. It means you do what you can and release what you can't. It's active surrender. It's aligning your energy with divine purpose instead of personal panic. Imagine if every ounce of energy you spent on fear was redirected into faith. Imagine if you woke up and instead of thinking, what if this doesn't work out? You declared, what if this is the day it finally does? That single shift in language changes your state. It changes your focus. It changes your energy. Because where focus goes, energy flows. When you focus on worry, your energy flows toward problems. When you focus on trust, your energy flows toward solutions. The same energy that fuels panic can fuel progress. The only difference is what you believe in. Trust doesn't mean ignoring your challenges. It means facing them with confidence that you're not alone. It means standing in uncertainty and saying, even here, I believe there's a purpose. It means choosing faith when everything in your circumstances screams fear. When you operate in trust, you stop fighting life and start flowing with it. You realize that life is happening for you, not to you. Every obstacle becomes an opportunity. Every delay becomes divine preparation. You begin to see that you don't need to control the plan when you're connected to the one who designed it. Worry shrinks your world. Trust expands it. Worry says, what if I fail? Trust says, what if I grow? Worry is survival mode. Trust is creation mode. Worry reacts. Trust responds. One drains you, the other fills you. When you stop worrying, you free your mind to create again. You allow new ideas, new strength, and new peace to flow through you. You stop being consumed by what could go wrong and start being inspired by what could go right. The key is awareness. You have to catch yourself in the act of worry and redirect that energy instantly. The next time you feel anxiety rising, stop and breathe. Ask yourself, what am I focusing on? Then shift it. Replace what if it doesn't work with what if God's plan is bigger than I can see. Replace I don't know how with I don't need to know how. I just need to take the next step. Each time you redirect your thoughts, you rewire your faith. You build trust like a muscle through repetition, through consistency, through surrender. Every great breakthrough begins with a shift in focus. You can't hold on to worry and walk in faith at the same time. One will always silence the other. The moment you choose trust, you step into alignment with peace, purpose, and divine timing. You no longer waste energy fighting against what's not working. You invest that same energy into believing for what's possible. Because when worry ends, trust begins. And when trust begins, miracles start moving in your direction. Delays are one of the most misunderstood parts of life. When something doesn't happen as quickly as we expected, our first instinct is to question it, to assume that something went wrong, that maybe we missed our chance, or that maybe God forgot about us. But the truth is, what looks like a delay to you is often divine direction in disguise. You're not being denied, you're being developed. You're not being held back, you're being prepared for something greater than you can currently imagine. A delay isn't a sign that you're off track. It's proof that the plan is still unfolding exactly as it should. Because sometimes if the door opened too soon, you wouldn't be ready to walk through it. Sometimes if the opportunity came before you were equipped, it would crush you instead of bless you. The challenge is that we live in a world obsessed with instant results. We want everything fast. Answer, success, progress. But spiritual timing doesn't move on human demand. God doesn't rush because of our impatience. He moves when the timing aligns with the purpose. Every delay has a reason, even if it's invisible right now. That waiting period you're in, it's not wasted. It's working on you, shaping your faith, stretching your patience, building your endurance. Because if you got what you wanted the moment you asked for it, you'd never learn the strength that comes from trusting through the silence. Divine direction often comes through what feels like delay. Think about it. If every prayer were answered instantly, you wouldn't develop persistence. You wouldn't learn to trust beyond what you can see. Growth requires time, and time requires trust. You have to trust that God is not only preparing the blessing for you, but also preparing you for the blessing. When you're delayed, it doesn't mean the promise has been canceled. It means the foundation is still being laid. A skyscraper takes longer to build than a small shack because its foundation must be deeper and stronger. The same applies to your destiny. If your calling is great, your preparation will take time. Every great person who ever fulfilled the purpose went through a season of delay. Look at the stories of those who changed history. They all waited. They all faced moments where nothing seemed to move, where doors stayed closed, where prayers went unanswered. But those delays weren't punishment. They were preparation. They were divine pauses that redirected them from where they thought they were supposed to go to where they were actually destined to be. You're not waiting for something random to happen. You're waiting for alignment, for the right people, the right place, the right moment, and the right version of you to all converge. A delay can also be a form of protection. Sometimes God keeps you from something because he knows it's not ready for you or you're not ready for it. That opportunity that didn't happen, that relationship that fell apart, that door that never opened, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. He saw what you couldn't see. He saw the heartbreak that could have followed, the stress that could have consumed you, the trap that could have destroyed your peace. So instead of letting you walk into that prematurely, he delayed it. You call it frustration, heaven calls it mercy. But the human mind resists waiting. We start to doubt. We ask, why isn't this happening yet? Did I miss my chance? Am I not good enough? And that's when we have to remember. Delay doesn't mean denial. God's timing is not man's timing. Sometimes the thing you think is late is actually right on schedule. You may be standing in a hallway of closed doors, wondering why nothing is opening, but what if the hallway itself is the classroom where you learn patience, faith, and resilience? What if the delay is the very thing designed to strengthen you for what's next? Because when you finally step into the promise, you won't be shaken by the pressure. It will feel natural because you were refined during the waiting. It's in the delay that your character grows. It's in the waiting that your spirit matures. You begin to learn that trust isn't tested when things are moving fast. It's tested when things stand still. That's where true faith is born, not in the mountaintop moments, but in the seasons where you can't see the summit yet you keep climbing anyway. The delay is molding you, shaping your habits, and teaching you how to depend on something greater than your own plans. Because if everything worked out exactly as you envisioned, you'd rely on your strategy, not on your faith. You have to stop confusing delay with defeat. You have to stop thinking silence means absence. Just because you can't see movement doesn't mean there isn't progress happening beneath the surface. Just like a seed planted in the ground, growth is happening even when it's unseen. You don't dig up the seed every few days to check if it's growing. You trust the process. You water it, nurture it, and give it time. In the same way, your dream is buried in divine soil right now. It's not dead. It's developing roots. When the timing is right, it will sprout, and what once looked like delay will suddenly make perfect sense. There's also a psychological truth in divine delay. It builds resilience. When things don't come easily, you learn to persevere. You learn to fight for your faith. You develop the strength to hold on even when your circumstances tell you to let go. That's where growth happens. That's where purpose matures. The delay is not about holding you back. It's about building you up so that when the blessing arrives, you have the maturity to sustain it. Many people can achieve success, but not everyone can sustain it, because sustaining success requires patience, humility, and gratitude, all of which are developed during seasons of waiting. And then there's direction. Sometimes what feels like delay is actually God steering you toward something better. You think the plan fell apart, but in truth, he was rerouting you. Just like a GPS divine direction recalculates when you take a wrong turn. It doesn't abandon you, it redirects you. The detour may take longer, but it still leads to the destination. The extra time isn't wasted, it's teaching you something the shortcut never could. Every delay carries a message if you're willing to listen. It might be telling you to rest, to prepare, to release control, or to trust deeper. It might be guiding you to strengthen your faith before the next season. It might even be keeping you hidden for a while until the right time, because exposure before maturity can destroy potential. God doesn't just want you to arrive. He wants you to arrive ready, and readiness takes time. So when you find yourself in a delay, don't let frustration blind you to the fact that divine direction is still at work. Don't waste your waiting by complaining. Use it to grow, to listen, to align your heart with purpose. Because someday, when you look back, you'll realize that the delays were the most important parts of the journey. They were the silent spaces where your faith was strengthened, your focus was refined, and your spirit was trained to trust the timing of something much greater than yourself. God removes what limits you to make room for what's meant for you. It doesn't always feel like it in the moment, because losing something or someone you wanted can be painful, confusing, and disorienting. You start to question what went wrong, why it happened, and if you could have done something different. But sometimes what feels like loss is actually liberation. Sometimes what feels like rejection is redirection. There are moments in life where you pray for God to open a door, but instead, he closes one you were never meant to walk through. And at first, that can sting. You might not understand why something that seemed good had to end. But when God removes something from your life, it's not punishment, it's positioning. It's him clearing space for something better, something aligned, something that fits the version of you he's developing. You can't move forward if you're still clinging to what was. Growth requires letting go. Every time you step into a new level, certain things and people from the old one can't come with you. Not because they're bad, but because they're not built for where you're going. It's like climbing a mountain. You can't carry every bag you started with. At some point, the weight slows you down, and what once felt necessary becomes a burden. God knows when you've outgrown something. He knows when a situation has served its purpose. So he starts to shift things. He begins to separate you from what's familiar so he can guide you into what's fruitful. But because we're human, we often resist that process. We fight to hold on to what's leaving instead of trusting what's coming. When God removes something, he's not taking from you. He's creating space within you. That space is sacred. It's the soil where new purpose takes root. The pain of losing what you thought you needed is the very thing that prepares you to receive what you truly need. You can't pour new wine into old wineskins, and you can't receive new blessings while your hands are full of what no longer serves your destiny. God will sometimes empty your hands, not to leave you empty, but to fill you with something greater. But because we don't see what's next yet, we misinterpret that emptiness as abandonment. We think the absence means God has forgotten, when in truth, he's simply rearranging. You've got to trust that his subtractions are just as strategic as his additions. We love when God blesses us, when doors open, when people show up, when opportunities unfold. But we forget that his no is just as holy as his whys. The no is often what saves us from destruction. The closed door is often what protects us from unnecessary pain. The breakup, the layoff, the missed opportunity, it all hurts, but sometimes that pain is the pathway to your purpose. You wouldn't have moved if you hadn't been pushed. You wouldn't have grown if you hadn't been forced to. Comfort can become a cage, and sometimes God has to shake your foundation just to set you free. Think about the people or situations you once thought you couldn't live without, yet now you realize you're better because they left. That's divine removal at work. It's not cruelty, it's compassion. God loves you too much to let you settle for less than what's meant for you. Sometimes he will let something fall apart, not to break you, but to build you differently. You can't step into a new season carrying the old version of yourself. And sometimes the only way to evolve is to release the attachments that keep you tied to the past. There are moments when you'll pray for God to bless your plans, but instead he'll dismantle them. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too small. He sees what you can't see. He knows that if he gave you what you're asking for now, it would limit what he wants to do later. You're thinking short term. He's thinking eternal. You're trying to make something work that's beneath your destiny. So he steps in and he removes what you would have settled for, not to hurt you, but to free you from limitation. You can't build a palace if you're still protecting a tent. It's easy to praise God when he adds, but true faith is shown when you can praise him when he subtracts. When you can say, even though I don't understand, I trust that this is making room for something better. Because faith isn't tested in abundance. It's tested in loss. It's in those moments when things are taken away that your trust becomes real. Can you still believe that he's working for your good even when you feel empty? Can you still declare that he's faithful when your plans fall apart? That's where growth happens. That's where you step from belief into surrender. Sometimes the removal is internal. God begins to strip away mindsets, fears, and patterns that no longer serve your growth. He starts to challenge your comfort zones, your excuses, your self-doubt. You begin to feel uncomfortable, not because you're failing, but because you're transforming. The discomfort is part of the divine renovation. He's tearing down what limits you on the inside so that he can expand what's possible on the outside. You can't carry old thinking into a new season. You can't experience breakthrough with a mindset built for survival. So he removes your limiting beliefs, your need for control, your tendency to cling to what's familiar, and in doing so, he frees you to become who you were always meant to be. This process often comes with pain because pruning always hurts. When a gardener prunes a tree, they cut off branches that are still alive but aren't bearing fruit, not because the branches are bad, but because they're taking nutrients away from the parts that could thrive. God does the same with us. He removes the branches in your life that look alive but aren't producing growth. Relationships, habits, commitments, even identities that no longer align with your calling. He'll cut them away not to harm you, but to strengthen what remains. The pruning process feels like loss, but it's actually multiplication in disguise. There's also freedom in realizing that what's removed was never yours to keep. Some things are seasonal. Some people are meant to walk with you only for a chapter, not the whole story. Holding on to what's meant to leave blocks what's meant to enter. You can't receive the next blessing while gripping the last one in fear. When you finally release control and trust the process, peace enters. You stop chasing what left and start preparing for what's next. You understand that divine removal isn't rejection. It's redefinition. It's God refining your path, rebalancing your priorities, and redirecting your focus toward purpose instead of comfort. Every time something is removed, ask yourself, what is this making room for? Because it's never just about what's lost. It's about what's being prepared. The job that ended might be clearing the way for the career that aligns with your purpose. The friendship that faded might be making space for relationships that lift you higher. The plan that collapsed might be creating room for a destiny far beyond what you could have built on your own. Nothing leaves your life without purpose when you're walking in divine alignment. The hardest part of this journey is trusting that subtraction can be a blessing. But when you look back, you'll see that everything God removed was something that could have limited your growth, distracted your focus, or diminished your faith. What felt like an ending was actually an upgrade. What felt like loss was preparation. What felt like emptiness was space being made for abundance. Because he never removes without replacing, and he never takes without the intention to restore greater than before. Peace doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Most people spend their lives trying to control everything around them because control gives the illusion of safety. If they can predict it, plan it, or prepare for it, they think they can prevent pain. But life doesn't work that way. The more you try to control, the more anxious you become because deep down you know that control is temporary. You can't control people. You can't control timing. You can't control outcomes, and trying to do so only leads to frustration. True peace begins the moment you release the need to control and decide to trust that even if things don't go the way you planned, they're still unfolding the way they're meant to. There's a part of us that craves certainty. We want to know what's next, when it's going to happen, and how it's all going to work out. But certainty is an illusion because life will always bring moments that challenge your understanding. Faith doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It thrives in it. Peace is not the result of having everything figured out. It's the result of believing that you don't have to. When you trust that there's a greater plan at work, one designed with purpose and precision, your heart stops striving for control and starts resting in confidence. That's when peace shows up, not because the situation changed, but because your perspective did. Control is fear's way of pretending to be strong. It says, if I can manage everything, nothing can hurt me. But trust is love's way of saying, even if I don't manage everything, I'll still be okay. Control restricts, trust releases. Control drains your energy, trust renews it. When you're in control mode, you're constantly reacting, adjusting, planning, and worrying, trying to make life bend to your will. But when you trust, you allow life to unfold as it should, knowing that every step, even the uncomfortable ones, has meaning. That's not weakness, that's strength in its purest form. Peace begins when you accept that you are not the one holding everything together. You are not the architect of every outcome. You're the participant in a divine plan that's far bigger than your understanding. The anxiety that comes from control is rooted in the belief that everything depends on you. The peace that comes from trust is rooted in the belief that you are guided, protected, and supported by something greater. The moment you stop carrying the weight of control, your shoulders relax, your mind quiets, and your heart remembers what it feels like to breathe freely. Control is exhausting because it's endless. The moment you think you've secured one area, another begins to slip. You fix one problem, and another appears. That's because control is built on fear. It needs constant maintenance. But trust is built on faith. It sustains itself. When you trust, you stop trying to manipulate timing. You stop forcing connections. You stop overanalyzing outcomes. You learn to let things flow instead of trying to force them to fit. Life starts to feel lighter because you're no longer fighting against it. You start to notice that peace doesn't mean everything around you is calm. It means that you are calm within the storm. One of the hardest truths to accept is that control often comes from trauma. When you've been hurt, betrayed, or disappointed, you subconsciously decide to never let it happen again. So you tighten your grip on life. You plan everything, predict everything, prepare for everything, because unpredictability once caused you pain. But what if your healing begins not by controlling more, but by trusting deeper? What if the very thing you're afraid to release is the thing that's suffocating your peace? Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over. It means saying, I'm not in charge of everything and that's okay. It's the ultimate act of courage because it requires faith, and faith always demands surrender. When you live from a place of trust, you stop needing to know every answer. You become okay with mystery. You start to believe that unanswered prayers aren't ignored, they're redirected. You stop fearing change because you know that change is often the channel for growth. You stop obsessing over outcomes because you realize that peace is found in the process, not the result. You no longer measure success by control, but by connection. Connection to God, to your purpose, to the present moment. Because the truth is, control isolates you from peace while trust connects you to it. Peace can't exist where control dominates. You can't have both. The more you try to control, the less peace you have, and the more you trust, the more peace flows naturally. It's a paradox, but it's one that defines spiritual maturity. When you release control, you're not losing power, you're aligning with it. You're no longer operating out of fear, you're moving with faith. That's where peace lives, in the space where you're doing your part, but not carrying the whole burden. You act, but you don't attach. You prepare, but you don't panic. You plan, but you don't pressure. You can tell when you're operating in control instead of trust by the way it feels. Control feels tight, tense, anxious, and forced. Trust feels open, calm, assured, and steady. When you're controlling, your body is in a constant state of resistance. You clench your jaw, your shoulders rise, your thoughts race. But when you're trusting, your whole being relaxes into alignment. It's not that challenges disappear, but you stop letting them define your emotional state. You stop reacting to life and start responding with faith. That's where peace becomes your power. There will be moments where everything inside you wants to take control again, when life feels uncertain, when plans fall apart, when people disappoint you. That's when you remind yourself peace is a choice. It's not given to you by circumstances. It's created by your decision to trust in something greater than those circumstances. The same energy you use to worry can be used to worship. The same energy you use to control can be used to create. You don't have to carry everything. Release what's not yours to hold. When you begin to trust deeply, you realize that life has a rhythm, a divine flow. Things happen when they're supposed to. People enter and exit your life at the right times. Opportunities unfold when you're ready to receive them. And even when things seem chaotic, there's still order behind the scenes. That's what trust gives you, the ability to see beyond what's visible. It opens your eyes to divine timing, divine protection, divine orchestration. You begin to sense that nothing is random, that everything is connected in ways you may not understand now, but will one day. Control limits your experience because it's rooted in fear of what might go wrong. Trust expands your experience because it's rooted in faith that things will work out for your good. Control says, I'll only be at peace when everything is perfect. Trust says, I'll be at peace because I know I'm protected even when everything's not perfect. That difference changes everything. When you operate from control, you're always chasing peace. When you operate from trust, peace starts chasing you. There's freedom in realizing you don't have to have all the answers. You don't need to know how or when. It's enough to know who. The moment you release the burden of control, you allow grace to move. And in that grace, peace isn't something you pursue anymore. It becomes something you carry. It's within you, constant, unshaken by what's outside you, because it's rooted not in control, but in unshakable trust. Your breakthrough begins when your mindset shifts from fear to faith. Everything in life starts in the mind. The thoughts you repeat, the stories you tell yourself, the beliefs you hold about what's possible. Fear and faith are both powerful forces, but they cannot coexist. One will always dominate the other. Fear limits, faith liberates. Fear focuses on what could go wrong. Faith focuses on what could go right. Fear paralyzes you. Faith propels you. The moment you decide to shift your internal narrative from fear-based thinking to faith-based believing, everything around you starts to change. Your breakthrough doesn't begin with an external event. It begins with an internal decision. Fear is learned. It's built over time through disappointment, through past pain, through moments where you felt powerless or unprepared. It disguises itself as logic, whispering things like, be realistic, or don't get your hopes up. But what fear really wants is control. It wants to keep you safe, small, predictable. The problem is safety and purpose rarely exist in the same space. You can't live in full purpose while staying in the comfort zone that fear built. Faith, on the other hand, asks you to step into uncertainty with confidence, to believe in a plan you can't yet see. It challenges you to rise above what your circumstances say and align with what your spirit knows. That's where your breakthrough begins, not when fear disappears, but when faith becomes louder than fear. Your mindset determines your movement. When fear leads, you hesitate, overthink, and play small. You find reasons not to act because fear always justifies itself with logic. But faith doesn't need proof, it creates it. When faith leads, you take bold steps. You act with conviction. You speak life instead of limitation. You start to operate with the quiet, knowing that even if things don't go exactly how you planned, they will still work out for your good. That kind of mindset shifts your energy, your confidence, and your ability to recognize opportunities that fear would have blinded you from seeing. Fear keeps you focused on lack. It makes you obsess over what you don't have, what might go wrong, and what could fail. Faith focuses you on abundance. It reminds you that resources, connections, ideas, and opportunities are already being orchestrated in your favor. Fear says, what if I'm not enough? Faith says, I was chosen for this moment. Fear says, it's too late. Faith says, I'm right on time. Every time you choose faith over fear, you strengthen a new mental pattern, and those patterns eventually create new results. The shift from fear to faith is not a one-time event, it's a daily practice. Every morning, you're given the choice to believe in what's possible or dwell on what's problematic. Every challenge is an opportunity to strengthen your faith muscle. You do it through your words, your focus, your perspective. Fear looks at the mountain and says, it's too big. Faith looks at the same mountain and says, this is where I'll grow stronger. The difference is not in the size of the obstacle. It's in the mindset of the person facing it. You'll know you're still operating in fear when your thoughts are filled with what if questions that paralyze you. What if it doesn't work? What if they reject me? What if I fail? But faith asks a different kind of what if. What if this actually works? What if this is the breakthrough I've been praying for? What if this situation is preparing me for something greater? The same imagination that fear uses to create anxiety, faith uses to create vision. You don't need to eliminate imagination. You need to redirect it. When your mindset shifts from fear to faith, your language changes too. You stop speaking from limitation and start speaking from possibility. You stop saying, I can't, and start declaring, I will. Words carry energy, and the moment your vocabulary changes, your reality starts to catch up. You begin to affirm what you desire instead of repeating what you dread. You begin to prophesy progress instead of perpetuating panic. Fear thrives in silence. Faith thrives in declaration. You build faith by speaking it before you see it. Fear tells you to wait until you feel ready, but faith tells you to move now and grow as you go. That's the key to breakthrough. You act before the conditions are perfect, because waiting for perfect timing is often fear disguised as patience. There will never be a moment where all the uncertainty disappears. The power comes from moving anyway. Faith isn't the absence of fear. It's the mastery of it. It's the decision to walk through the fire knowing that the same God who led you in will lead you out. Every time you move through fear with faith, you're training your mind to trust the unseen more than the visible. Fear is a reaction. Faith is a decision. Fear waits for proof. Faith creates it. Fear keeps you replaying the past. Faith keeps you reaching for the future. When you start living by faith, you stop letting temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You start aligning your life with vision instead of validation. You stop needing to see the full staircase. You just take the next step, trusting that more will be revealed as you move. Breakthrough always meets movement. It doesn't meet hesitation. The universe, God, life, whatever you call it, responds to faith-filled action. The most powerful thing about faith is that it transforms your perception of challenges. What used to look like an obstacle now looks like opportunity. What used to trigger panic now triggers preparation. You start to see that every setback was a setup for something greater. Fear focuses on the problem. Faith focuses on the promise. That shift alone changes everything. Because once your focus changes, your energy changes. And when your energy changes, your results start to align with your faith instead of your fear. Fear makes you shrink to fit your surroundings. Faith makes you expand to meet your purpose. Fear says, who am I to do this? Faith says, who am I not to? Fear tells you to stay hidden because failure might hurt. Faith tells you to step out because obedience brings growth. You cannot walk in both directions at once. You can't hold on to fear and reach for faith simultaneously. One hand has to let go. The moment you release fear even a little, faith rushes in to fill that space. Sometimes the breakthrough you're waiting for isn't in your circumstances, it's in your belief system. If you still see yourself through the lens of fear, you'll keep attracting experiences that confirm that fear. But if you start seeing yourself through the lens of faith, you'll begin to attract opportunities that confirm your trust. Life reflects your inner state. The external breakthrough always follows the internal shift. The moment you start believing that things can work out, that you are capable, that you are guided and supported, you begin to open the door for miracles to move. You can't wait for confidence to replace fear. Confidence comes through faith in action. Every step you take, every risk you embrace, every time you choose belief over doubt, you're expanding your faith. Fear loses its grip when you stop feeding it your focus. It fades when you stop repeating its narrative. Faith grows when you nurture it with gratitude, with patience, with persistence. The more you practice faith, the less fear feels natural. And eventually, faith becomes your default mindset, the lens through which you see every situation. Breakthrough is not about external change, it's about internal alignment. When your heart and mind align with faith, what once felt impossible begins to unfold naturally. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly appear. Peace replaces panic. Purpose replaces confusion. And you realize that the walls holding you back were never physical. They were mental. They were built by fear and dismantled by faith. The shift doesn't happen overnight, but the moment you choose to believe more than you fear, the process begins.